Good evening and welcome to The Right Side, where we talk about today's news, issues, and trends from an admittedly conservative perspective. I'm your host this evening. My name is Chris Pareja, and I'm joined by Larry Sand. He's an education activist, former teacher, and will be speaking this evening at the Conservative Forum, who happens to underwrite the show, but we were lucky enough to catch him on his way over and get a chance to talk to him one-on-one about education reform, how hard it is to make change in education, and what he would do if he had more control over the system. Larry, thanks for joining us this evening.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So, I mentioned that you were a teacher. Tell me a little bit about that experience. How long did you teach? Where did you teach? What was your...
I taught for 28 and a half years, 4.5 of those in New York, where unfortunately I lost my job because New York was going through a very bad financial situation in 1975 and I got laid off, seniority. And then I started teaching again in Los Angeles in the mid-'80s and taught for 24 years before retiring in 2009.
Okay, great. So what changed you from educator to education activist? Did you see enough scary things while you were in there? What happened?
I was just your average teacher. I think I was a little bit better than average, but just your normal teacher trying to do a good job. And I started noticing certain things were amiss, and I didn't think that much about them. And my real, I guess, baptism was in 2005. There's a proposition called Prop 75, which would have made the political part of a teacher's dues voluntary. The default position then, as is now, is that you are automatically paying, and you have to go through various hoops to opt out. Prop 75 would have made it you were out and you would have to opt in. The teachers union, CTA especially, did not like this because they knew that most teachers would not pay the political part of the dues. And they spent the summer essentially lying about the proposition, scaring teachers, scaring the general public. And the proposition, which was very popular in the spring, by the time it came to vote in November, went down and lost by about 5 or 6%. And I was just sickened by what I saw the teachers unions do. I just thought it was shameful. And that was the eye-opening event in my life. And then a year later, I co-founded an organization called the California Teachers Empowerment Network, because we realized that most teachers don't get the truth about their field. They don't get what's really going on. They get what their union wants them to know, and they get what the school district wants them to know, and it all comes with a certain spin. And so for the last, 6.5 years now, we just try to get information to teachers that they're not getting from anywhere else.
And you write a lot of articles and aggregate a lot of articles that do exactly that. Can you give us some examples of the kinds of information that you're getting for them that they're not getting other places?
Well, most teachers aren't really aware that, for example, that tests are not bad things. Most teachers, the latest craze is that testing is a horrible thing. Mm-hmm. Testing is not a horrible thing. Granted, a teacher should not be judged solely on how the students do on a test, but teachers do need to be judged or evaluated, at least in part, by how well students do on tests, because this shows that students are learning. Mm-hmm. And what other field is there where people are judged by how many years they're on the job? Teachers basically get paid more for each year they're in the classroom. Mm-hmm. Most fields, you get paid more because you're doing a good job. I think teachers should be evaluated that way, but the unions don't see it that way.
So the words that you're not using, but it seems like you're referring to, are crazy things like accountability and merit pay.
Accountability and
or performance pay.
Or pay for performance, yeah. Different people have different names for it. Yeah, I mean, just once again, like the real world, if you do a good job, you get paid more money. People, the one question I get asked so often is, do you think that teachers are paid enough? And my answer is, well, yes and no. If you're a really good teacher, you're not getting paid enough. If you're a mediocre teacher, you're probably getting paid too much.
And if you're a pedophile, you should be out of a job.
And if you're a pedophile, you shouldn't be making anything.
Right.
And, well, that's a whole other subject. And, well, anyway, just as far as pay for performance, yes, good teachers definitely deserve more than they're getting, and mediocre teachers deserve less, and the poor performers shouldn't be there in the first place. Right. I would just like to talk about poor performers, and people, when I say this, people start talking about teacher bashing. I'm not bashing teachers. Just as in any field, there are wonderful teachers. There are good teachers, there are mediocre teachers, and there are rotten ones. But as I say, in other fields, the rotten ones are out of a job, but in public education, especially in California, it's almost impossible to get rid of a bad one. Eric Hanushek, who's an economist and a brilliant man at Stanford, has said that if we could get rid of 5 to 7% of the bottom performing teachers, we would have a world-class education system rivaling that of Finland. Now, 5 to 7%, let's think of what this actually means. If you take the middle number, 6% of teachers, we have 300,000 teachers in California. 6% would be 18,000 teachers.
That's a sizable.
Sizable, right? Now, each one of those 18,000 teachers has 25 kids in a class. That means 450,000 children are getting a rotten education every year in this state, and this is not acceptable.
And that's if they only teach one class.
Yeah, I wasn't going to get too deep in that. Yeah, when you think of a middle school, how many...
High school.
And high school, how many kids are being affected? And if a kid, especially a young kid, gets a stinker 2 years in a row, that kid will be so far behind and probably turned off to education forever.
Yeah, and we do need to instill a love of learning, because there are things that you just don't learn in school, but at least if you're willing to explore and go out and discover these things, you can still augment your own education, but not if you're not interested in learning anything.
Absolutely, yeah. A good teacher is very, very valuable, and think of, a good teacher over a 20-year period, how many lives they affect. I mean, these people are worth their gold,
yes,
of course, but unfortunately, the reverse is also true, and that a bad teacher is worth less than nothing, yet they still have their jobs.
Well, and the reality is people don't remember the good experiences often as much as the painfully bad ones, and so many of those teachers may not get the credit, but the math works the same in the positive direction. If a bad teacher impacts 450,000 or more, a good teacher impacts 450,000 or more as well.
Absolutely, and we need to cultivate more of the good and, as I say, get rid of the bad. One of the problems with getting rid of certain teachers is another myth, is the small class size myth. If you went to a parent and said that your kid can be in a mediocre teacher's class and you're going to have 20 kids in the class, well, we're going to get rid of 10% of the teachers and all the classes are going to be bigger, but your kid's going to be with a better teacher. But, of course, we're going to have bigger classes. So your kid's going to have 22 kids, 10% more. Now, would you rather your kid be in a class of 22 with a great teacher or 20 with a mediocre teacher? Does that question answer itself? Yes.
You would think so.
Yeah, small class size is a myth. It's been shown over and over and over again that it doesn't really matter. It might matter to some kids, but we don't know, can't always identify those kids. It's a huge waste of money. And the more teachers you hire, the more bad teachers you're going to have. It's just a numbers game.
You're dealing with humans.
That's right. And people don't think in these terms. These are the sound bites. Well, everybody, small classes, all kids need small classes. No, they don't. I didn't like small classes because I was a shy kid. I'd rather be lost in the crowd. I like big classes.
Right.
So,
but also the exchange of ideas, if it is an interactive classroom, you have a larger perspective pool to draw from.
Sure. Yeah, there are advantages, certainly advantages to larger classes. And the cost savings would be amazing.
Well, and there's also the hybrid model. Maybe some children who are identified who need that extra assistance might be better off in a smaller classroom where they have the individualized attention, but there are others who are going to thrive regardless of environment, and you might be able to allocate accordingly.
I think that's a very good point. Yeah, instead of a one-size-fits-all solution, yeah, some kids do better in small classes, and if we can identify these kids, and other kids do fine in a class of 40. So if those kids go in a class of 40, and the small class kids be in a class of 20, and we don't have to have every class with the same amount of kids the way things are now.
Or even looking at it, on one topic, maybe they're a smaller class environment, another one where they thrive. And so there could be a hybrid approach of some sort.
And certainly with special ed kids, these kids need a lot more individualized attention, so these classes traditionally have been smaller, and I do think that is justified. But it's a case-by-case situation.
Sure. And so we talked a little bit about underperformers, but when you're talking about underperformers, are you talking about just the people who tend to get low test scores, or is there a broader spectrum that you're referring to that we might need to jettison?
Well, we need to figure out, granted, not all teachers can be measured by tests. It'd be pretty hard to measure an art teacher or a dance teacher by a test. So yeah, but we have to develop metrics, show students how much they've learned. Now I don't have all the answers, but we do need to figure out ways to measure student learning and let that be the bulk of a teacher's how we judge teachers.
Okay.
Because see, the way we judge and reward teachers now is by the number of years in the classroom, and if they take certain classes.
Mm-hmm.
All districts offer what are called euphemistically professional development classes. I've taken enough of them to know that my professionalism was not very much developed by these classes. Yet this is how teachers get to earn more money, and this is shameful.
Right.
And once again, yes, not only standardized tests, but we need to figure out ways to measure student learning that go beyond just testing. And this is where the energy should be now. And I think some people in universities are trying to figure this out.
Well, yeah, and I've talked to some young, excited, vibrant teachers who have recently come into the field and are fired up about learning and are feeling like they're making progress with the kids. And they get frustrated because with the layoff slips coming, they're always the first ones to go. And people who kind of checked out a while ago are a protected species. And so I agree with you that performance metrics would be a great way. What are your thoughts on school choice and helping let parents make choices?
Well, yeah, school choice is the real game changer. There are, I believe, 18 states with 12 programs, and I'm sorry, 12 states with 18 programs, but these just deal with certain kids. These deal with special ed kids or kids who are living in poverty. In California, we don't have anybody. We have really very little school choice. I believe the ultimate is the Swedish model, which is universal school choice. Very simply, what they do in Sweden is a kid starts out in a public school, parent likes it, no problem. If at any point that kid is not doing well, the parent decides that public school is not good, parent can pull the kid out, put him in another public school or in any private school where there's room. And the big and is that the money follows the child.
Similar to a voucher kind of a program that might be implemented here.
Yeah, it's universal vouchers, universal school choice. And it's working so well in Sweden that even the socialists like the privatization factor. But the problem here is that very special interests, I have to say mostly the teachers' unions, do not like the privatization factor, because private school teachers are not unionized. And the teachers' unions would take a huge hit, and they don't want to take a hit. I understand that. These organizations live on power and money, and they don't want to give any of that up. I just want to make one other important point about school choice, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One of the rallying cries coming from the traditionalists are that, well, you're siphoning money from public education. Well, there's a certain amount of truth to that, but you're also siphoning off kids. So there's no difference if you're taking 30% of the kids out of public education, taking 30% of the money out. It's the same thing for the kids who are there. They're still being funded the same way. And most importantly, there have been 10 studies done looking at how public schools have fared where voucher system has been instituted.
Yeah.
9 of them, the public schools have gotten better. 9 of the 10 studies, the public schools have improved where there have been vouchers. The 10 studies showed no difference. Not one study showed that public schools are hurt by vouchers. Why? Competition works. Isn't it amazing? It works in the real world. Why not in education? And this is why I believe in school choice. It also empowers parents.
Yes.
It makes parents the ultimate decider in what kind of education their children get.
Yes.
Public school or private school, maybe you like the touchy-feely kind of Waldorf stuff, or maybe you like the boot camp kind of thing. Whatever, this empowers parents, and this is what we need. And we're making some progress in the country, but not enough, and we desperately need more school choice in California.
But it almost sounds like you're talking about putting the children's education before that of the needs of the union. That's crazy talk.
It is crazy talk. Michelle Reeve in Waiting for Superman said famously, she was basically banging her head against the wall when she was superintendent of public instruction in the DC schools, and she said, I finally figured out what the problem was. She said, public education is all about the parents. It's not about, excuse me, it's all about the adults. It's not about the kids. And she's exactly right.
That's exactly right.
We've lost our way. We really have lost our way.
Right. And so if you had the capability of stepping in, making the changes that were necessary, how would you restructure the landscape to make it a situation where your ideas could thrive?
Well, we would have to get rid of the state assembly and some of the state senate in its current configuration, because it's very, very difficult to get anything through the legislature, because the teachers' unions essentially run it. I mean, certainly the assembly.
But so does it mean that we have to get rid of the assembly, or does that mean we have to get rid of the people who are in there with their locked-in philosophies, or do we just need to get the money out of it that's coming from the special interests like the teachers' unions so that people can think more clearly?
Well, certainly getting the money out of it would be one way to go. There is a lawsuit now called Students Matter, started by a Silicon Valley entrepreneur by the name of David Welch. Very simply, this would get seniority, tenure, and the dismissal statutes out of the Ed Code.
I can hear screaming already.
And this is coming up. There's going to be a court case starting next January 27th. And this would not get rid of those three things, but it would it would put the decision in local hands. Local school boards, which have plenty of power now, would have even more. Because now, if a teacher has to be let go, if you're a teacher of the year and I'm a mediocre teacher and I was hired a day before you, even though you're the better teacher, you're out the door. And this has been literally been happening. And so this would put that situation into the local school board hands.
Right. Well, even within the last year, there was an initiative moving through the legislature where it would have made it easier to fire people for reasons of deviancy of some sort. And it's one of those things that you think, okay, common sense, let's protect our kids. And the legislators killed it because of California Teachers Association saying, you do that, you're done.
SB 1530 would have made it easier to get rid of certain types of pedophiles, teachers who dealt drugs to their kids, awful things. And the teachers union fought this, and it died in the Assembly Education Committee.
Right.
That was amazing. And the only good news is that got a lot of press, and that even the most liberal newspapers in the state, the editorial writers, all were in favor of this SB 1530.
I mean, but it didn't seem like it was as loud as you would expect that it would have needed to be. Do you think something like that could see a rebirth and be more effective on the next time through?
It's a very good question. I know Alex Padilla, who is behind SB 1530, is coming back with, I don't know if it's identical, but it's certainly a similar kind of legislation. I don't know where it is now in legally, how far it's gotten. Yeah, I don't know. I'm at a loss to know how it's going. I mean, I would just think this is a no-brainer, and in 1530 certainly did not take away teachers' due process rights. Had plenty of due process. It's just things have gotten to the point where it's undue process.
Right.
And I don't know what it's going to take. I mean.
So talk to me about what C10 is up to, and if there are any initiatives coming up that our viewers might be interested in following.
Okay, well, we are a 501c3, and we don't really take positions. I certainly, as an individual, have plenty of opinions, as I think
you're the only guy on the planet with any opinions, I can tell you, yes.
But as president of C10, when I'm acting in that role, we send out a monthly newsletter with all kinds of information that teachers just don't know about. It's a monthly newsletter, goes out to about 900 teachers, and people are very appreciative for the information. And we deal a lot with union issues. People don't know, for example, they don't have to be in the union. They can actually resign from the union.
And See, and that's not something I think that's widely known. I know that people have tried to, for example, forego the political component of dues, and that takes a long time, and the paperwork seems to get lost regularly. And
yeah, you have to stay on top of it. You're right. You still have to pay to play. When I retired from teaching in 2009, the last several years I taught, I was what's called an agency fee payer, and I just had to pay the part of my dues that goes for collective bargaining. I didn't have to pay for the political part. Now, and a lot of teachers don't know that you can actually do that.
And even though you're technically able, sometimes there are repercussions of doing something like that. Is that correct or incorrect?
Yeah, I was actually very fortunate because I worked at a union light school where a few people stopped talking to me, but my life really wasn't interrupted. But there are other schools where if I had done that, I would have driven home without a windshield. Mm-hmm. And teachers, teachers can be, some who are very strong union supporters will stop talking to you and just shun you completely. And yeah, so you have to be a certain type to do it because you'll be found out because you can't vote on a union contract, for example. It's amazing they still will take the collective bargaining part because they say they represent you, but they never ask you if you want to be represented.
Right.
And so just to veer off topic for a second, if I think I'm a good teacher, I want to walk in there and get my own contract, or bring in a lawyer, or bring in a small group of people to represent me. I can't do that.
Right.
I have to, because the union insists on it. I have to pay them dues, mm-hmm. the non-political part. And then if I try to get out of paying the political part, they call me a freeloader.
Right. Right.
Or a free rider, and I say no, I'm actually a forced rider. You keep all the stuff you say you do for me. Let me be my own agent.
Yeah. Well, if there are others who are like-minded or teachers who want to get on your distribution list, or if people would like to get some teachers that they know and love mm-hmm. on your distribution list, how can they find out more?
Okay, we have a very big, constantly updated website. It's c10home.org, C-T-E-N, home is in the place where you live, .org. And if you have any questions, please, you can email. The email address is right on the homepage website, and please feel free to contact me. I love talking to teachers.
Okay, great. Well, Larry, thank you for joining us. If you hold on for just a moment, we'll be right back after a word from our underwriters, the Conservative Forum.
Say, well, I say I'm a constitutional law attorney. And they say, oh, really? What kind of constitutional law attorney? I say, well, I'm the true kind, the kind that believe that the Constitution is what the Constitution says and what it was intended to say. Anything beyond that is tyranny and should not be allowed.
So it's come to this, my friends. You ready the second American Revolution against a ruling class that simply lectures but does not listen or defend the American people? It is government versus the people. Am I right? Yes. Look at the Electoral College example. Right? A leftist popular challenge to states' rights. You think the founders weren't brilliant people? Did they not know what they were doing by carefully calibrating to get the small states and the big states to come together? Why does Wyoming get 2 senators in California? Actually, I'd rather have Wyoming's 2 senators.
welcome back to The Right Side. That was a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum. They not only sponsor this show, they also are and best known for the speaker series that they present on a weekly or on a monthly basis, the first Tuesday of each month. And the doors open approximately 6:30. Program starts at 7 at the IFES Portuguese Hall here in Mountain View at 432 Steerland Road. This evening, as we were lucky to get Larry on his way to the forum, you'll be hearing a panel discussion on education reform and restructuring education for a stronger California in the future. But in April, Dr. David Bobb will be joining from Hillsdale College to speak to the group. In May, we have Bill Whittle, known for PJTV appearances as well as Afterburner. And in June, we have Ying Ma, author of Chinese Girl in the Ghetto, her story of transitioning from communist China here to America and the land of opportunity, and how she began to learn very quickly when she moved into the rougher parts of Oakland, California, that it wasn't always the land of opportunity when you were clumped into the wrong area of the state and the town. So on that note, if you want to find out more about the Conservative Forum and upcoming events, you can find more information on the web at theconservativeforum.com. In closing out this evening, we were able to speak with Larry a little bit about some of the difficulties that occur when the education system is not tailored to the needs of the kids, and instead when teachers that might be underperforming are protected, stifling the growth of others that might be better suited to teaching in the classroom. But if education is important to you, and it is important to most of us, not only because of the children themselves now, but the future of the state, the future of the country, the future of our economy and our workforce and our competitiveness on a global level, we need to all be as involved as possible. And so I encourage you to check out C10, look for articles that you might find written by Larry, and just get as active as possible on a local and state and federal basis so that you can make a difference. Thanks again for joining us this evening on The Right Side. I've been your host, Chris Pareja, and I'll look forward to seeing you sometime soon, either in person or on the show. Have a great night.